The Toronto Raptors, for pretty much the first time this season, have everyone back healthy and out of health and safety protocols, and they've been pretty darn good with all of them back and in the lineup. So let's go ahead and talk about why they've been so successful and what type of success we could expect from the Toronto Raptors for the remainder of the season. So if we're going to talk about the success of the Toronto Raptors, we need to start talking about Pascal Siakam, because I've seen everyone loud and clear every year since the Raptors have won the championship for all the crap that Siakam has gotten. Some of it just being on the basketball court and for his lack of play, some of it just being egregious and outright disrespectful. But Pascal Siakam is back. You best believe. Pascal Siakam was never gone to an absurd degree. Sure, was he playing at a max contract value level? No, but most players don't that are on max contracts anyways at this point in time, the way the league's going. But B, he wasn't even playing that bad. He just wasn't playing anywhere near as good as he was when he was playing with Kawhi, which shouldn't have been that surprising considering he was going from a number 2 option to a number 1, or even arguably a number 3 option to a number 1. And he's been absolutely brilliant this year. The stats on the season don't necessarily reflect how good he's been, because part of it's been just, you got to watch the games and see how good he's been and how impactful he is. But part of it, too, if you do just want to look at the statistics, is that he does have a couple of outlier stinker games in his first week or two back from injury. It's earlier on in the year, because he did miss about 5 months with a shoulder injury. But over the last 10 games or so, this is probably the best stretch of basketball we have seen from Pascal Siakam. You could argue a stretch throughout that season that we won the championship, or earlier on in that season afterwards. But he's been brilliant throughout this season. 25, 28, 25, 20, 18, and 33 is his points per game throughout his last 6 games. His rebounding has improved drastically this year while playing at the center spot. His playmaking is about as good as I've ever seen it. His assist numbers reflect that. He's been finding open teammates. He's been hitting threes at an absurdly high rate, hitting threes at a rate higher than, frankly, a lot of people you wouldn't expect him to be hitting them at a higher rate at, especially as of late. This is the best stretch of basketball I think we've seen from Pascal Siakam. So as much as I've heard all of the negative noise around Pascal Siakam over the last few years, I'm going to give him the praise, because I know most of the people that hate on him aren't not going to give him that praise. Fred VanVleet's also been absolutely crucial. One of what I argue is the big 3 for this group, with Siakam, Fred VanVleet, and OG Anunoby. Obviously, it's not an all-star big 3, but they're all pretty darn good in their own way, and Fred VanVleet's been having the best season of his career. There's definitely an argument for him to make the All-Star game, as I made the case for in a video earlier on about a week ago. Fred VanVleet's playing the best basketball of his career, as far as I'm concerned. Improved playmaker this year, in my opinion. That was my concern with him heading into the year, was how is he going to fare as the primary playmaker on a team. He's improved in that regard. I never considered him to be some true playmaking point guard, and I still don't think he's some elite playmaker, but I think he's a lot better than a lot of people expected, and certainly than I expected. His scoring has been great. He's been much more efficient, shooting well from deep, finishing well at the rim, you name it. He's been very good at scoring the basketball this year, extremely efficient, while being a pretty darn good playmaker as well. He's averaging close to 30 points per game over his last 6 games. He's been absolutely brilliant on this stretch. Now that he doesn't have to do as much on the offensive end, and there's more attention on guys like Siakam and guys like OG, he's been absolutely brilliant, and he definitely has an argument to be an all-star this year. His defense, impactful. This Raptors team is just nowhere near the same without him on the basketball court. That's just the reality of it. He just impacts every facet of the game so much for this team. Steals, deflections, good on-ball defense, scoring, playmaking, rebounding, even as a guard. He just does it all, and he's been absolutely brilliant. OG Anunoby is the third piece of that big 3, and he's been brilliant in his own right this year. He's had to step up and take on a bigger offensive role, and that is a little bit lesser now with Siakam back in the lineup. Siakam and OG haven't really played together that much this year at all, but he can be a bit more of like a third option or a second option at times when playing with some bench players throughout the rotations. Doesn't have to be that primary guy like he was at times earlier on in the year, especially when Fred VanVleet was struggling a bit at the earlier part of the season. But he's been very good. Much more improved mid-range game, better handle, can attack the rim a little bit more. Still gives you very good wing defense. Improving a little bit as a playmaker, but it still is limited, but nonetheless improving. But he just gives all that effort to you on the basketball court. He's still a very good wing defender, still a very good three-point shooter, but now just has a little bit more to his game where he can create his own three a bit, create his own mid-range shot a bit, can attack the rim and finish at the rim a bit better. And now having him be in a role where he doesn't have to be the primary guy with everyone healthy, he's been absolutely brilliant, and I love his role on this team. He's been brilliant so far for the Raptors. The Raptors as a whole have been brilliant throughout the stretch as well. Offensive and defensive rating, specifically over this last 4-game win streak, has really shown how good this group can be. They were right amongst the top in both. They are currently 6th in defensive rating and 4th in offensive rating across the stretch. And sure, they're probably not going to continue with that level of productivity. But it's also not absurd to think, especially from a defensive standpoint, that they can be a top 10 defense, except for when they're playing bigger centers, when Siakam has to play at center, because Siakam is now starting at the center, which we will talk about in a minute. And their offense, probably not top 4, but like they also do have a pretty deep offense within that starting lineup. Like Gary Trent is your number 4 option. Kind of nice. It's not a bad offense. OG Anunoby is your number 3. Yeah, it's not bad. They don't have that star power. But there's a lot of depth in the scoring options on this Toronto Raptors offense, and they've been shooting the 3-ball well as of late. And if they can continue to do that, then that's definitely going to help them moving forward as well. And I mentioned a few other pieces before I talk about some of the more untraditional lineups that the Raptors have been running and how that can benefit them moving forward. Scotty Barnes continues to be solid, good rebounder, continues to improve on the defensive end day in, day out. He hasn't done as much on the offensive end as of late, but that isn't necessarily due to his fault, but simply due to the fact that now he's the 5th option in that starting lineup. Fred, OG, Siakam, Gary Trent, they're all better offensive players than him. And as much as I'm sure Nick Nurse would love Scotty Barnes to get more touches from a development standpoint, from a winning standpoint, Scotty Barnes just not that guy on the offense right now, and he was never expected to be. He's way ahead of schedule already on the offensive end, but with that much offensive talent around him, he doesn't really have to get the ball that much. There's not really anything being run for him at a significant level. He's still going to attack the rim a little bit. He's going to get a bit of a fast break. He'll get some offensive rebounds and putbacks, and he'll shoot a few catch-and-shoot threes. But ultimately, Scotty Barnes' reliance in the offense just isn't anywhere near as great as it was earlier on in the season, and that's not necessarily a bad thing in the short term for the success of the Toronto Raptors. Long term, and for the development, yeah, I want Scotty Barnes to shoot like 30 shots a game so he can just develop a ton on offense and turn into a superstar. But for right now, it works. It makes sense. Gary Trent, as previously mentioned, been great this year, continues to be a good scorer, can be inefficient and a bit hit and miss at times, but he hits some big buckets, clutch shots, threes, mid-rangers. He's really improved as a 3-level scorer and really improved his defense this year, one of the tops in steals and deflections this year. He's been brilliant. Team Birch continues to be a solid backup big. Precious Achua misses too many bunnies still, needs to work on his finishing and touch around the rim, but I still like his upside. And unfortunately, Chris Boucher just has apparently lost his ability to shoot a 3-point shot this year, which is really unfortunate. And he's looked a little bit better as of late, starting to focus a little bit more on rebounding and defense, cutting to the rim a little bit. But the fact that someone who's been such a confident and good 3-point shooter for his whole NBA career, even before he got regular minutes, and now is just kind of not hitting them, is unfortunate. But to just wrap things off, I want to briefly mention the interesting untraditional lineups the Raptors have been using as of late. These are the lineups, such as even just the starting lineup with Siakam at center, which isn't necessarily untraditional, but Siakam is not anywhere near a true 5-man, but he's been fine there. Defensively, against certain teams, it is going to hurt. When we match up against Embiid, Karl-Anthony Towns, Nikola Jokic, Siakam doesn't truly have that size, strength to deal with those at an adequate level. But it's not like we have anyone else on the roster who's going to deal with it much better. Keem Birch maybe, but even then that's debatable. He's not exactly tall himself either. But the more traditional lineups that I'm interested in, and have actually had relative success, though they have been limited minutes, is minutes where like Pascal Siakam and Scotty Barnes have been running with the bench unit or just without Fred VanVleet. And they've been running the point. And I like it. I really like it. I like the versatility this Toronto Raptors team has. I like the size and the length that they have. It makes for some very fun and exciting defensive lineups. It'd be nice if we had a backup point guard that we could trust and rely on more than Delano Banton and Malachi Flynn. But I like the versatility that we have in those lineups. I've been saying this since preseason. I really like the length of this Toronto team. I really like the versatility that brings. It's very impactful on both ends of the floor, but specifically the defensive end, and is a big part why their defensive rating is so high. And I like it. Scotty Barnes has really improved as a playmaker throughout the season. He was always going to be a good one. He showed flashes early, but his assist numbers have started to reflect that as of late, starting to play a little bit of those point guard minutes. Siakam has been part of that as well. Part of it's their role, but part of it's just internal improvement of their playmaking. So I'd like to see more of those lineups moving forward. I think the Raptors team have a lot of chance to innovate from an offensive standpoint and a defensive standpoint, and to show a level of flexibility and a new style in the NBA, some of these groups. I'm looking forward to it. So let me know what you guys think down in the comment section below. That is my thoughts on the Toronto Raptors in their most recent stretch and up to this point in time in the season. Hope you guys have a great rest of your day. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.